How come you sat at the table without asking for permission? Lena's voice cut through my apartment like a blade. My own apartment, my own table, the plate I'd just set down, the one with the roast chicken I'd spent 2 hours making, flew from her manicured hands and shattered against the linoleum. "Bravo!" Evan clapped, slow and mocking. "The old man needs to know his place." My son, 28 years old, all gym selfies and borrowed confidence, standing in my kitchen like he owned it. His wife, 6 months married, a lifetime of entitlement, crossed her arms and smirked at me like I was something she'd found on the bottom of her shoe. I didn't move, just watched the chicken grease spread across the floor, the ceramic shards glinting under the overhead light. 58 years on this earth, 30 of them raising that boy, and this is what I got. A broken plate and mockery in my own home. "You done?" I asked quietly. "Not even close," Lena said. She pulled out her phone, started filming me. "Tell the internet how you tried to poison us with undercooked meat." The chicken had been perfect. I'd used a thermometer, 165 degrees, exactly like the FDA recommends. But facts didn't matter to her. Only the narrative. "And while you're at it," Evan added, moving closer until I could smell the expensive cologne he probably couldn't afford, "tell them how you've been stealing our mail, using our address for your discount utilities." That stopped me cold. "Your address?" "Yeah." He grinned, and I saw the same smile I'd seen when he was 7 and broke his sister's toy on purpose. "Lena's been getting bills here for 3 months. We're practically residents. Common law says we have rights to this place." "Common law says you're full of it." I stood up slowly, feeling my rigger's knees protest. 30 years climbing scaffolds and tightening bolts at the old amusement pier had left me wiry, strong in ways that didn't photograph well for Instagram. "Those bills are fraud. You're using my address to dodge hookup fees at your flip house on Maple Street." Lena's phone dipped, just for a second. Just long enough for me to know I'd hit the mark. "Prove it," Evan said, stepping into my space like he used to do in high school when he wanted to intimidate someone smaller. I could prove it. I had the utility statements in my desk drawer, the ones showing secondary users I'd never authorized. I had the texts between him and Maya, my daughter, my quiet daughter who never caused trouble. Where she'd let slip, they were gaming the system on Dad's account. I had documentation going back 90 days, organized in folders with dates and account numbers. But I didn't say any of that. Not yet, because proof was only useful when delivered at exactly the right moment. "Get out," I said instead. Evan shoved past me, shoulder-checking hard enough that I stumbled backward into the counter. My wrist caught the edge wrong, and I felt skin split. Not deep, but enough to bleed, enough to leave a smear on the laminate. "Whoops," Lena said, not even looking at me. She was already at the door, filming the apartment over her shoulder for her followers. "This dump will flip better than his life ever did. Good bones, terrible owner." They left. The door slammed so hard a picture frame fell off the wall. The same feeling I got 30 years ago when I had to rig an emergency harness to save a kid who'd climbed somewhere he shouldn't have. Calm. Focused. Ruthless in its efficiency. "You wanted a lesson," I thought, reaching for the paper towels. "You're about to get one." I wrapped my wrist, pulled out my phone, and started taking pictures. The broken plate, the grease stain, the fallen picture frame. Every piece of evidence, time-stamped and geotagged. Then I opened my desk drawer and pulled out the utility bills, photographed those too, and sent everything to a new folder on my laptop labeled simply documentation. My phone buzzed, a text from Maya. "Dad, I'm sorry about tonight. They're just stressed about the wedding." I didn't reply, not yet, because Maya had a choice to make, and I needed to see which side she'd land on when the pressure really started. Outside my window, the coastal town spread out in streetlights and fog. The old amusement pier jutted into the black water like a rotting finger, the arcade hall at its end lit up for some corporate event. I'd spent half my life keeping that structure safe, tightening bolts that tourists never saw, checking cables that kept chandeliers from falling on wedding parties. In 2 weeks, Evan and Lena would have their wedding reception there, in the hall where I worked, where I knew every camera, every policy, every exit and entrance. They'd handed me the battlefield and didn't even know it. I cleaned up the chicken and glass, wrapped my wrist properly, and sat down at my laptop. Time to plan. Before we go any further, hit the hype button, take a second to subscribe and like the video. It really helps the channel grow. And tell us in the comments, what would you do in this situation? The ER waiting room at midnight smelled like antiseptic and old coffee and desperation. I sat with my wrist wrapped in paper towels turning pink, waiting for a nurse to call my name, when Evan and Lena walked through the automatic doors. Both limping, both furious, both completely surprised to see me. "What the hell are you doing here?" Evan demanded, loud enough that the intake nurse looked up sharply. I held up my wrist. The paper towels were soaked through now. "Cut myself on the counter after someone shoved me. You?" "We had an accident," Lena snapped. She had a scrape on her knee, visible through torn designer tights that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. Evan's elbow was swelling, already turning purple at the edges. "What kind of accident?" I asked, keeping my voice level and curious. "None of your business, old man." But a security guard near the intake desk was watching them with professional interest, and I recognized him immediately. Gabe. We'd worked together for 5 years when the old arcade hall got converted into the wedding venue where I now ran maintenance. He was younger than me, built like he'd played linebacker in college, and he had a good memory for faces and situations. He caught my eye and nodded once. A small gesture that meant, "I see this. I'm paying attention." 20 minutes later, after a nurse with kind eyes had glued my wrist and wrapped it in proper bandaging and told me to keep it dry, my phone buzzed in my pocket. Text from Gabe. "Parking lot cam caught them shoving each other by their car after they left your place. Their own fight, not your problem. Policy board shows cameras are posted. Check the link. Clear footage, timestamped 30 minutes after they'd left my apartment. Evan and Lena in the parking lot of my building, getting into it with each other. Her shoving him first, him shoving back, both of them slipping on the wet pavement in their expensive shoes. Their mutual shove and slip entirely self-inflicted, nobody else involved. The timestamp was clear. The camera signage was visible in the frame. Legal, usable, beautiful. I saved the video to 3 different places and pocketed my phone. When I walked past them in the hallway, Lena was hunched over her phone, deleting something frantically. I caught a glimpse of Instagram before she angled the screen away. Probably the story where she'd posted a photo of me standing over the broken plate, captioned with some lie about abuse and violence, and old men who couldn't control their temper. Too late. Screenshots live forever in the digital age, and Maya's bridesmaid friend, a girl named Sarah who worked at the coffee shop downtown and who'd never liked Lena, had already cashed a repost before the original disappeared. "See you at the wedding," Lena called after me, her voice dripping with malice and something that might have been satisfaction. I stopped, turned slowly. "Wedding?" "Yeah, at your workplace." Evan grinned through his pain, and I saw the calculation behind his eyes. The same look he'd had when he was 16, and figured out he could blame his sister for things he'd broken. 2 weeks from today, we booked the main hall, the big one with the chandeliers and the view of the water. You're not invited, obviously, but you'll see it anyway. You'll probably have to clean up after us. Of course they had booked it there, the venue where I spent 40 hours a week tightening bolts and fixing rigging, where I knew every camera angle and exit route, every policy posted on every wall. The venue with the security systems I'd helped install, the emergency protocols I'd helped write. "Congratulations," I said, and meant it in ways he couldn't possibly understand. They had no idea what they'd just handed me. No concept of how badly they'd miscalculated. Evan's grin widened. Don't worry, Dad. We'll make sure to take lots of pictures. Really document the whole thing. For posterity. You do that, I said, and walked out into the cold night air. In my truck, I sat for a moment before starting the engine. My wrist throbbed dully under the bandage. My chest felt tight with something that wasn't quite anger, but was close to it. Colder, more patient. I pulled out my phone and opened a new note. Started typing. Wedding timeline. Venue layout. Camera positions. Security protocols. Guest list access. Permit requirements. The planning started there, in a hospital parking lot at 1 a.m, with the sound of ambulances in the distance and the taste of salt air coming in through the cracked window. 2 weeks, 14 days, 336 hours to prepare. They wanted a villain. I'd give them one. But on my terms, with my rules. And when it was over, they'd understand exactly what it meant to push a man who'd spent 30 years making sure people didn't fall. The rehearsal dinner was standing room only. 100 guests crammed into the renovated arcade hall, the one with the vaulted ceilings and exposed beams I'd personally certified as structurally sound just last month. Chandeliers I'd hung 2 summers ago glittered over rented tables draped in white cloth. The DJ tested speakers I'd wired into the wall myself, making sure the bass wouldn't rattle the windows overlooking the black water. I wasn't supposed to be here. Not as a guest, anyway. But Gabe had quietly okayed me staying in the building for routine maintenance checks during a private event, and no one questioned the guy in the work shirt with a tool belt clinking at his hip. I was part of the scenery, invisible, exactly where I needed to be. I kept to the edges near the service corridors, watching everything with the careful attention I'd learned from 3 decades of making sure nothing fell on anyone's head. Evan held court at the head table, regaling some college friends with a story about flipping houses and disrupting the real estate market with guerrilla renovations and authentic content creation. His audience laughed at the right moments, raised their glasses when he paused for effect. He was good at performing, always had been. Lena posed for photos near the windows, her cocktail dress worth more than my monthly rent, her makeup perfect under the warm lighting. She'd hired a photographer, a nervous kid with expensive equipment, and was directing him like a general commanding troops. Get my good side. The light's better over here. Make sure you catch the chandeliers in the background. Then she saw me standing near the emergency exit, and her whole face changed. The performance mask slipped for just a second, showing something uglier underneath. She whispered something to Evan. He stood up abruptly, grabbed the microphone from the DJ booth, and his voice boomed through the speakers I'd installed. Hey everyone, quick announcement. He grinned at the crowd, playing to them like an actor on a stage. My dad's here, uninvited, but whatever, right? Family's complicated. Dad, why don't you come up here? The crowd turned as one. 100 phones rose like a field of glowing flowers, all of them recording, all of them ready to capture whatever happened next. I didn't move, just stood there with my tool belt and my work boots and my bandaged wrist. Don't be shy. Evan's grin was poison-wrapped in enthusiasm. We wanted to ask you something publicly. You know, since you're so big on honesty and doing things the right way, come on up. I stepped forward slowly, letting my boots sound on the hardwood floor. Gabe watched from his position near the bar, his hand resting casually on his radio. Ready. Lena met me at the edge of the tables, positioning herself so the photographer had a clear shot. This was planned, choreographed. I could see it in the way she held her shoulders, the way she'd positioned herself in the light. Give me your apartment keys, she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. The room went silent. Even the DJ stopped pretending to adjust his equipment. Excuse me, I said. Your keys. She held out her hand, palm up, fingers perfectly manicured. Her voice carried to every corner of the hall. "You're not using that place right. It's wasted on you. We need it. For staging our renovation projects, for storage, for our business. You can find somewhere smaller, something more appropriate for a man your age." "No." Her hand became a fist. "No, just like that. No discussion. It's my apartment, my lease, my name on the deed before that, back when I actually owned it. You want keys to something, you can buy your own place." "We're family," Evan said, moving beside her, presenting a united front for the cameras. "You're being selfish. You're being unreasonable. You're making this harder than it needs to be." "I'm being realistic," I said quietly. Lena's face flushed red. "You miserable old—" And she slapped me, open-palmed, hard enough that my head snapped sideways and my vision went white for a second, hard enough that I tasted copper. The room erupted, gasps, murmurs, chairs scraping against the floor. Phones filmed from a dozen angles, 20 angles, 30. And above them all, visible in the corner of my eye, were the little signs that Gabe and I had installed 6 months ago during the security system upgrade. "You are on camera. Audio and video recording in progress. By entering this venue, you consent to surveillance." The manager rushed over from the kitchen entrance, trying to defuse the situation before it got worse. "Sir, you're disrupting a private event. I'm going to have to ask you to—" "He's fine," someone said from the back of the room. The crowd parted like water. An old man with a walker, moving slow and deliberate, made his way forward through the tables. He wore a medal on his lapel, the union's Lifetime Service Award, the one they only gave out once every few years, and half the room recognized him immediately. Mr. Holloway, my old foreman, 79 years old now, stroke weakened on his left side but sharp as ever. The man who'd put 15 kids through college with his scholarship fund after his wife died of cancer. "I know this man," Holloway said, his voice thin but clear as crystal. "Worked with him for 20 years. He saved a worker's life once. Kid named Tommy Reeves. Some of you probably know his mum. She runs the bakery on 5th Street. Tommy was 20 years old and thought he was invincible. Climbed out on a catwalk that wasn't rated for his weight. The cable started to give. This man," he pointed at me with a shaking hand, "improvised a harness from cargo straps and D-rings when our proper equipment was 3 floors down. Did it in under a minute. Kid would have fallen 4 stories onto concrete. You could have heard a pin drop on the expensive carpet. He's a good man, honest, doesn't steal, doesn't lie, doesn't cut corners, and he sure as hell doesn't deserve to be hit in public by his own family." Lena tried to recover, tried to regain control of the narrative. "Who is this fossil?" she whispered to Evan, but she'd forgotten about the microphone on the head table, the one still live, the one connected to the speakers throughout the hall. Her words carried to every corner. Someone gasped. An older woman near the front put her hand over her mouth. Holloway just shook his head slowly and turned away, dismissing her like she was beneath notice. I pulled out my phone and made one call. "Ruth, my sister." It rang twice. "Now?" she asked. "Now," I said. I stepped outside into the cold night air. Behind me, Evan's voice boomed through the speakers. "You just lost your invite, old man. Security. Gabe, get him out of here." Gabe escorted me to the door, but his grip on my elbow was gentle, professional, nothing that would look bad on camera. When we got to the exterior entrance, out of sight of the guests, he leaned in close. "You okay?" he asked quietly. "Perfect," I said. "That was the second time she hit you on camera." "I know." "You want me to file a report?" "Not yet, but keep the footage safe." He nodded slowly. "Whatever you're planning, be careful." "I'm always careful. That's why nobody dies when I'm working the rigging." I walked to my truck in the parking lot. My face throbbed where she'd hit me. My wrist ached under the bandage, but I felt something close to satisfaction settling into my bones. They'd just played into my hands twice in 1 week. 3 times if you counted the original dinner incident. All on camera, all documented, all with witnesses. I sat in my truck and didn't start the engine right away, just looked at the lit-up hall, at the silhouettes of people moving behind the big windows, at the carefully maintained structure I'd spent years keeping safe. In 10 days, they'd have their wedding ceremony in that same space. In 10 days, they'd expect me to smile and stay quiet and let them parade their victory in front of everyone I'd ever worked with. In 10 days, I'd show them what happens when you mistake patience for weakness. My apartment looked different when I got home past midnight. Not because anything had physically changed, but because I was seeing it with new eyes, strategic eyes. The eyes of someone who'd spent 3 decades solving structural problems and preventing disasters. I cleared the kitchen table, the same table where they'd thrown my plate, and spread out everything I'd been gathering for the past week. Utility bills showing the secondary users, screenshots of their social media posts, venue maps I'd drawn from memory, showing every camera angle and exit route, permit records that Ruth had pulled for me from the municipal clerk's office, where she'd worked for 30 years. Ruth, my older sister, 60 years old, no patience for nonsense, no tolerance for fraud, and access to every public filing in the county. She'd called me back 20 minutes after I'd left the venue. They really slapped you, again? Twice now, both on camera. Jesus, you want me to file assault charges? Not yet. I want to let them keep digging. She'd been quiet for a moment. You're playing a dangerous game. I'm playing a careful game. There's a difference. Now, at my kitchen table, I laid out the planning board like I was preparing for a major rigging job. Date of the wedding ceremony, 10 days from now. Location, the same hall where they'd just humiliated me. Guest list, probably 200 people, most of them young, most of them more loyal to social media than to facts. Evan and Lena had made 3 critical mistakes, and I was going to exploit every single one. First mistake. They'd used my address for utilities at their flip house on Maple Street, trying to dodge hookup fees and building inspections. Documented fraud. Small scale enough that the police probably wouldn't care, but big enough that the utility companies would. And the building department definitely would, once they realized someone was doing unpermitted work while dodging the proper oversight. Second mistake, they'd assaulted me on camera, multiple cameras, multiple times, in a space with clearly posted recording policies and dozens of witnesses who'd seen it happen in real time. Every single incident was documented with timestamps and metadata and facial recognition software built into the venue's security system. Third mistake, they'd underestimated what I knew about their house flip on Maple Street. I opened my laptop and pulled up the permit records Ruth had sent me in a password-protected file. The flip house, a 2-story craftsman bungalow with good bones and terrible previous owners, had an expired building permit. The original permit had been for minor cosmetic renovations, but Evan had gone way beyond that. The gas line relocation he'd bragged about on Instagram, unpermitted. The structural changes to remove a load-bearing wall, unpermitted. The electrical work to add recessed lighting, unpermitted, and the neighbors had noticed. 3 separate complaints filed over the past 2 months. Noise violations, dumpsters blocking the street, construction debris blowing into adjacent yards. One particularly detailed complaint about unsafe work practices and lack of proper safety equipment. All public record. All sitting in a file at the building department. All waiting for the right person to make sure the right inspector actually looked at them. One phone call to Ruth, and that inspector would be knocking on Evan's door by the end of the week. But that was step 3, maybe step 4. I needed to pace this carefully. Rush it, and they'd lawyer up and shut down. Take my time, and they'd keep making mistakes. First, I needed them to come to me. I needed them to escalate. I needed them to prove, on camera, with witnesses, that they were exactly as bad as I was about to make them look. I installed a wireless door chime that sent alerts directly to my phone. Not illegal. It was my own door, my own apartment. Then I rigged something that Ruth would call borderline insane, but that was perfectly legal according to the product specifications. A tamper die pack for my mailbox. Banks used them to catch thieves, the kind that exploded in a harmless cloud of bright blue powder if someone tried to open a package without authorization. Completely legal if properly labeled. I put a warning sticker right on the mailbox. Tamper-evident security device, opening without authorization will result in die release. If someone tried to steal my mail, say, to intercept building department notices or utility bills or anything else they wanted to keep me from seeing, they'd get a face full of blue powder and a very clear indication that I was paying attention. I sat back and looked at my planning board. 10 days until the wedding. 7 days until the building inspector would show up at the flip house. 3 days until the utility company would send someone to investigate the secondary user fraud. Everything timed, everything documented, everything legal enough to survive scrutiny. She'd had a jewelry box, nothing expensive. Costume stuff mostly, a few pieces with sentimental value. Earrings I'd bought her for our 20th anniversary. A bracelet from our honeymoon. A necklace her mother had given her. I'd kept the box in my closet, tucked in the back behind the winter coats. Private, marked with her name. 2 months ago, I'd noticed it was gone. Last week, I'd seen photos on Evan's Instagram. Styling tips for your home staging. The earrings arranged artfully on a windowsill. The bracelet draped over a coffee table book. The necklace hanging from a decorative hook. Used as props. For content. For likes. I closed the photo album and set the phone down carefully. They wanted to play games with what mattered. Fine. I'd show them what happened when you stole from someone who knew how to make sure nothing ever fell. The door chime triggered at 2 a.m. I was awake instantly, phone in hand, watching the live feed from the hallway camera I'd installed last year after someone had tried to break into the storage room. The camera was legal, posted notice in the building lobby, proper consent from the landlord, all the paperwork filed correctly. Evan appeared in the frame, dressed in black like he was auditioning for a movie about incompetent burglars. He tried my lock first, with what looked like a bump key, probably something he'd bought online after watching a YouTube tutorial. The lock didn't give. I'd upgraded it 2 days ago to a commercial-grade deadbolt, the kind that took actual skill to bypass, but Evan didn't give up. He went for the mailbox instead, trying to jimmy it open with what looked like a screwdriver. The die pack went off like a small firework. Blue powder erupted from the compromised seal, coating his hands, his black hoodie, his face. He stumbled backward, swearing loud enough that I could hear it through my door, and the motion-activated hallway lights kicked on. I gave him 5 seconds. Then I opened my door. "Evening," I said. He spun around, blue powder in his hair, murder in his eyes. "You—" "Tamper-evident security device," I said calmly, pointing at the warning label that was clearly visible on the mailbox. "Says so right there. Label's been there for 3 days. You want to file a complaint about it? Go ahead. Building policy allows security measures on individual mailboxes as long as they're properly labeled and don't pose a safety hazard. Die powder is non-toxic, washes off in about a week." His phone was still in his hand, still streaming live. I could see the viewer count on his screen climbing. 200 people, 300, 400, all watching him covered in blue dye, caught in the act. "You set me up," he sputtered. "I secured my property. You tried to break into my mailbox. Building camera backs me up on the timeline." I held up my phone, filming him filming me. "Want to explain to your followers why you're here at 2 a.m., trying to break into my stuff?" He lunged at me. Not smart. The camera caught that too, and this time there was no ambiguity about who initiated the physical contact. I sidestepped and let him hit the wall beside my door. Not hard, just enough to look stupid on camera. Then I walked past him, still filming, and headed down the stairs toward the building entrance. I kept walking, kept filming, and felt something close to satisfaction settle into my chest. At the wedding. In front of 200 witnesses. Perfect. The morning of the wedding, I woke up at 5 a.m., like I always did, made coffee. Did 50 push-ups and 50 sit-ups because my body would punish me if I didn't. Checked my phone to find 17 missed calls from Evan and 9 threatening text messages from Lena. The texts were mostly incoherent rage about the dye pack incident, which had apparently gone viral overnight. Someone had screen-recorded Evan's live stream and posted it everywhere. Twitter, Reddit, TikTok. The comments were brutal. Why is this dude breaking into mailboxes at 2 a.m.? The blue dye is literally labeled LMAO. Imagine being this stupid on camera. I screenshotted everything and added it to my documentation folder. The wedding ceremony was scheduled for 2 p.m. Beautiful timing. Golden hour for photos, not too hot, the water behind the venue looking like something from a postcard. Evan and Lena had spared no expense. String quartet for the processional, roses shipped in from somewhere expensive, a photographer who probably cost more than my truck. I arrived at the venue at noon, not as a guest, as staff. I had maintenance work scheduled, routine safety checks on the chandeliers before a major event, completely legitimate, completely documented in the venue's work order system. Gabe met me at the service entrance. You sure about this? About what? Doing my job? You know what I mean. I looked at him. Everything I'm doing today is legal. Everything is documented. Everything is on camera with proper consent. If something happens, it's because they make it happen. He sighed. Just be careful. The ceremony was beautiful. I had to admit that much. Lena wore a dress that probably cost more than some people's cars, all white lace and strategic beading. Evan stood at the altar in a perfectly tailored suit. The string quartet played something classical and emotional. The officiant, some friend of theirs who'd gotten ordained online, spoke about love and commitment and building a life together. I watched from the maintenance catwalk above the main floor, out of sight, tool belt on, technically working. The catwalk had a perfect view of everything, the guests in their rows of white chairs, the wedding party arranged by height, the photographer circling like a shark, capturing every angle. 200 people, maybe more, all dressed up, all emotional, all ready to witness true love, or whatever story Evan and Lena were selling. The officiant got to the vows. Lena was crying. Performance tears, I thought, but maybe real ones. Evan looked genuinely happy for the first time in months. For a moment, just a moment, I wondered if I should let this go. If maybe they'd grow up. If maybe the wedding would change them. Then Lena stopped, mid-vow. Turned her head slowly, scanning the room. Looking for something. Is he here? She called out, her voice cutting through the string quartet. The music stopped. The officiant blinked in confusion. I'm sorry. Him, the old man, my father-in-law. Is he in this building? Gabe stepped forward from his position near the main doors. Ma'am, if you're referring to the maintenance staff, yes, there's routine safety work being performed today. It was scheduled weeks ago. I want him here, down here, now. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Confused murmurs rippled through the rows of chairs. Why? Someone in the front row asked. One of Lena's aunts, I think. Because I want his apartment keys. He won't give them to me, and I want everyone to see him refuse me on my wedding day. I want it documented. This wasn't improvised. This was planned. Another viral moment. Another way to paint me as the villain, the cruel father who refused his children on the happiest day of their lives. The cameras were already out, phones recording from every angle. Fine. I climbed down the ladder slowly, letting my boots sound on each metal rung. Every eye in the venue turned to watch me descend. Every camera tracked me as I walked down the center aisle in my work clothes with my tool belt clinking. The string quartet had given up pretending to play. I stopped a few feet from the altar. "You wanted to talk to me during your wedding ceremony. I want your keys." Lena held out her hand, palm up, exactly like she'd done at the rehearsal dinner. Repeating the performance. "The apartment keys. You're wasting that space. It's selfish. We need it for our business, for our future, for our family. It's my apartment. We're your family. You should want to help us." "Help you how?" "By letting you fraudulently sublet a place you don't own." Her face went white. Someone in the audience gasped. "That's not," she started. "You've been collecting deposits from potential tenants. $3,000 a month, you told them, for an apartment that isn't yours. That's fraud, Lena. That's actually illegal." "You can't prove that." I looked at Gabe. He nodded once. The venue speakers crackled to life. Lena's voice recorded from a planning meeting she'd held in this exact hall 2 weeks ago. "The apartment's worth $3,000 a month if we sublet it. Easy. We just need to get him out first. Change the locks, claim squatters' rights or something. Old people don't fight back." Then Evan's voice. "Tell him it's for family, for storage, whatever. Once we have the keys, he can't do anything. He's too broke to afford a lawyer." 15 seconds of audio, pulled from the venue's security system, recorded in a public space with clearly posted consent notices, completely legal. The room exploded. Not violence, not yet. Just chaos. Chairs tipping, champagne glasses rattling on tables, the string quartet packing up their instruments, the photographer backing away slowly, still filming because that's what professionals do. Guests shouting questions. Lena's mother demanding to know what was happening. Evan's college friends looking uncomfortable and reaching for their phones to check if they were being recorded too. The officiant tried to restore order. "Please, everyone, let's just..." Evan grabbed something from the gift table, the card box, fat with envelopes. Then the ring box, the one holding the wedding bands they were supposed to exchange in about 3 minutes. He ran, not toward any of the exits, toward the service door that led to the boardwalk, the one I'd left unlocked because I knew that he'd panic and run and choose the path that looked easiest. The door that led exactly where I needed him to go. I followed at a walk. No hurry. I'd spent 30 years maintaining that boardwalk. I knew every plank, every bolt, every hidden service corridor. Evan only knew the tourist routes. Behind me, the venue erupted in arguments and accusations and shocked disbelief. Ahead of me, Evan disappeared into the grey afternoon light with stolen property in his hands. Let them all fight about the recording. Let them debate whether it was legal or ethical or fair. I had more important work to do. The rain started as Evan hit the boardwalk outside the venue. Not a downpour yet, just that cold coastal drizzle that made everything slick and treacherous. The kind of weather that made tourists slip and maintenance crews work double time. I followed him out the service door, moving at a steady pace, not running, just walking with purpose, the way I'd walked 1,000 times when checking the structural integrity of the pier. Evan had maybe 30 seconds head start. He was running toward the parking lot, the card box clutched under one arm like a football, the ring box in his fist. His dress shoes, expensive leather things that probably cost more than my monthly utilities, slipped on the wet planks. I cut left, toward the maintenance scaffolding that most people didn't even notice. The skeletal framework that ran under and around the main boardwalk, providing access to the support structure. 30 years of climbing this stuff had carved a 3-dimensional map into my brain. Above me, Evan's footsteps pounded on the main walkway. Below me, the ocean churned against the pier supports, black and cold. I moved through the scaffolding like I was 25 again, finding handholds by muscle memory, dropping down 2 levels to access the service alley that would cut him off before he reached his car. His friend was waiting in the parking lot, engine running. some kid from his college days with more money than sense, driving a BMW that was probably leased. Evan sprinted toward it, slipping once, catching himself on a railing. I reached the service gate control box and hit the emergency lockdown. The gate, bright yellow steel, rated for hurricane winds, clearly marked with warning signs, dropped down across the parking lot exit. It took 3 seconds to descend fully, and it made a sound like a guillotine slamming shut. Evan's friend saw it coming and hit the brakes. Not fast enough. The BMW clipped the gate at maybe 15 miles per hour. Not a serious crash, no one was hurt, but enough to deploy the airbag and crumple the front bumper and send the horn blaring into the rainy afternoon. Evan kicked out of the passenger side door, stumbling, gift card envelopes scattering in the wind and rain. The ink started bleeding immediately, turning the white paper grey and illegible. Checks and cash and gift cards, all of it ruined. I walked over slowly and picked up the ring box. Just the rings, nothing else. Evan sat in a puddle, soaked through, his expensive suit ruined, his carefully styled hair plastered to his skull. The blue dye from last night was still faint on his hands, visible even in the rain. "You're insane," he gasped. "Realistic," I corrected. "The gate's an emergency feature. Weather lockdown protocol. There's a storm warning for tonight. I'm just doing my job." "You trapped us." "The gate prevents vehicles from exiting during severe weather. It's in the venue's safety manual. Your friend chose to drive toward a closing gate. That's on him." Police sirens sounded in the distance. Someone from the venue had called them. Probably Lena, screaming about theft and assault and whatever other crimes she could imagine. Evan's friend was out of the car now, staring at me with wide eyes. "He locked us in. You saw it. He locked us in deliberately." "Did I?" I looked up at the traffic camera mounted on the light pole 20 feet away. "Because that camera shows you speeding toward a clearly marked emergency gate that was already closing. Your choice to not stop." "I'll tell them you set this up." "You do that, and then explain why you ran from your own wedding with stolen gift cards and your bride's ring." I held up the ring box so the camera could see it clearly. Then I pocketed it and walked away, back toward the venue, leaving Evan sitting in the puddle, with ruined envelopes floating around him like soggy confetti. Behind me, he screamed something about lawyers and revenge and destruction. The sirens got closer. I didn't look back. Friday morning came cold and grey, the kind of coastal weather that made my old injuries ache. I arrived at the Flip House on Maple Street at 8:30 a.m., half an hour before the inspector was scheduled to show up. The house was a craftsman bungalow from the 1920s, good bones hidden under bad decisions. Evan's truck was parked in the driveway, along with a contractor's van, and a dumpster overflowing with demolished drywall and old fixtures. I parked across the street and waited. The inspector arrived at 9 exactly. Derek Chen, 40s, methodical, carrying a clipboard and a camera, and the kind of expression that said he'd seen every code violation imaginable. He introduced himself to Evan on the front porch, and even from across the street I could see my son's posture change. Defensive, aggressive. I got out of my truck and crossed the street. "Dad, what the hell are you doing here?" Evan demanded. "I filed one of the complaints. I have a right to observe the inspection." Derek looked between us. "You're related?" "Unfortunately," Evan said. "He's my son. This is his project. I'm concerned about safety violations." Derek made a note on his clipboard. "Let's start with the permit. You applied for cosmetic renovations only. Minor updates, paint, fixtures. That was the scope." "Yeah, but we made some improvements along the way." "Improvements that required additional permits?" Evan's jaw tightened. "We didn't think they were necessary." "Let's take a look." The inspection took 90 minutes. Derek photographed everything: the relocated gas line, the removed load-bearing wall, the unpermitted electrical work. He checked the original plans against what had actually been built. He measured clearances and checked shut-off valves and tested ground fault circuit interrupters. Evan followed him around, trying to explain, trying to justify, trying to minimize. Derek just kept taking notes. Clive showed up halfway through, the crane operator from my union days, still built like he could lift a truck engine. We'd worked together for 20 years before he'd moved over to the construction side of things. "Heard there was an inspection," he said quietly. "Thought I'd observe, as a concerned union member. Appreciate it." We stood in the driveway and watched Derek work, watched Evan's face get redder, watched the contractor, some kid who looked barely old enough to hold a license, start quietly packing up his tools. Then Evan made a mistake. "The pallet lift is fine," he shouted at Derek. "You want proof? I'll show you." There was a material lift in the backyard, the kind used to move heavy loads to the second floor during construction. It was old, probably rented from a discount supplier, and it was loaded with drywall sheets that looked too heavy for its rating. Evan climbed onto the platform to prove a point. The lift tilted, not catastrophically, just enough, just wrong. The hydraulics groaned and the platform shifted, and Evan grabbed for the railing as the whole structure swung wide. I didn't think, just moved. 30 years of reflex took over. I sprinted across the yard, slammed my palm on the emergency stop button, and grabbed a safety harness from Clive's truck. The harness I'd used 1,000 times on high work, the one with the quick-clip carabiner. "Catch!" I threw it up. Evan caught it, barely, and clipped in as the platform tilted further. I hauled on the line, using the truck's bumper as an anchor point, and pulled him back from the edge until he could step off onto solid ground. He landed hard, breathless, furious. He looked up at me and spit, actually spit, right at my feet. "Cockroach," he said. The inspector had filmed the whole thing on his phone. The contractor had stopped packing and just stared. Clive's expression was unreadable. Derek walked over and attached a bright orange stop work order to the fence. "This site is unsafe. All work stops immediately until you obtain proper permits and fix the structural violations. I'm also recommending a full safety review by a licensed engineer." "This is his fault," Evan pointed at me. "He set this up. He's sabotaging me." "Sir, I'm citing you for the violations I found, not for anything anyone else did. The gas line is unpermitted. The structural change is unpermitted. The electrical work is unpermitted. The equipment is unsafe. These are facts. If you want to appeal, you can file with the board." "I'll file a lawsuit." "That's your right." Derek handed him a copy of the report. "But until this order is lifted, no work happens on this property." Evan crumpled the paper and threw it on the ground. "You'll regret this. All of you. I'll destroy you." I picked up the crumpled order and handed it back to Derek. "He'll need that for his records." Derek nodded. "I suggest he contact a lawyer and a real contractor." We walked back to our vehicles. Clive clapped me on the shoulder. "Nice save with the harness." "Old habits." "He spit at you." "I noticed. You're a better man than me." "I'm a patient man. There's a difference." By evening, the lenders had pulled out. The contractor had officially quit. And Evan's Instagram was full of angry rants about corrupt inspectors and sabotage by family and the system protecting old people who don't understand modern business. The comments were not sympathetic. The half-demolished boardwalk section was dangerous in good weather. At midnight, with a storm rolling in, it was borderline suicidal. I arrived early, before 11:30, and checked the structural supports. Most of the decking had been removed, leaving skeletal frameworks and exposed beams. The renovation crew had left equipment scattered around: a crane, some scaffolding, pallet lifts, coils of cable. I positioned myself on a stable platform with multiple exit routes. Old habit. Always know how to get out. Evan arrived exactly at midnight, alone, no phone visible. His face was haggard in the work lights the construction crew had left on. "You wanted to talk," I said. "Talk." He stood on the opposite platform, separated from me by a gap of about 6 feet and a 20-foot drop to the water below. "I pawned Mom's jewelry," he said without preamble. "The earrings, the bracelet, the necklace, all of it. It's gone. I needed money for the flip house. The lenders wanted a bigger down payment." Something cold settled in my chest. "When?" "3 months ago, right after the permit got approved. I knew you had the stuff in a box in your closet. I had Maya's old key to your place. I just took it. It wasn't yours. What does it matter? It was just sitting there, not doing anything, not helping anyone. I needed it, so I used it." "Don't be dramatic. It was just jewelry." Something in me snapped, not rage, something colder and more controlled. I stepped forward, right to the edge of my platform. "You want to say that again? What are you going to do? Hit me? Prove Lena right about you being violent?" "I don't need to hit you. You're destroying yourself just fine. You set all of this up. The inspection, the alarm kid, the leaks to that reporter. All of it. You orchestrated my destruction. I documented your choices. There's a difference." He moved closer, right to the edge of his platform. "You're a miserable old man who can't stand that I'm successful, that I built something, that people actually care about what I do. You built a fraud, and the only people who cared were the ones you were scamming." He shoved off from his platform, trying to jump the gap between us. Didn't make it. His foot slipped on the wet beam. He fell forward, arms windmilling, and I lunged without thinking. Grabbed his jacket, hauled him up and back. We both went down hard on my platform, sprawling inches from the edge. A plank cracked under our combined weight, splintered, tilted. We were going over. I grabbed a support cable, wrapped it around my wrist, and held on. Held us both. My shoulder screamed. My bandaged wrist tore open. But I held on. "You're insane," Evan gasped, hanging half off the platform. "Realistic," I corrected through gritted teeth. "If I let go, we both fall." Then footsteps on the catwalk above. I looked up, already knowing who I'd see. Maya, soaked from the rain, holding a piece of paper. "I did it," she said. Evan stared up at his sister. "What?" "I pawned the jewelry. Not him. Me." Maya's voice was flat, empty of emotion. Rain plastered her hair to her face. "I resented you, Dad. For years. You worked extra shifts instead of coming to my recitals. You chose overtime over my graduations, still tightening bolts on that stupid pier while she cried at home." "Someone had to pay the medical bills," I said, still holding the cable, still holding Evan. "I know that now. But I didn't know it then. I was 16 and angry, and I blamed you for everything." She looked at Evan. "When Lena started talking about getting revenge on Dad, about making him feel excluded and unwanted and useless, I helped. I planned the keys demand. I coached her on the slap. I told you to use Mom's jewelry in your post because I knew it would hurt him. All of it. Me." She dropped a piece of paper between us. It floated down, got caught by wind, landed on the wet platform. A pawn ticket. My wife's name on it. Maya's signature. "I'm the one who took the jewelry to the pawn shop. I'm the one who kept the money. I'm the one who told you it was Dad's fault when you asked why it was gone." She pulled out another paper, a notarized statement. "Priya has a copy. The police have a copy. I'm done lying." "Maya," Evan started. "Don't. Just don't. I watched you spit at him after he saved your life. I watched Lena plan to pull that alarm. I watched both of you turn into monsters, and I helped you do it. But I'm stopping now." I pulled Evan back onto the platform fully. Let go of him. Stood up slowly, feeling my shoulder protest. "Why now?" I asked Maya. "Because you keep saving him, even after everything. You keep saving both of us, and we keep hurting you, and I can't watch it anymore." Lightning cracked overhead, the rain intensified, the platform shuddered, and Lena appeared on the catwalk above, phone in hand, filming. "This is perfect," she said, her voice carrying over the storm. "The whole family falling apart. Literally, this is going to be amazing content. She tried to angle for a better shot, leaned out over the railing. Get back, I shouted. That rail isn't secure. She ignored me, leaned further. The phone's light illuminated her face, excited, energized, calculating the views and engagement. The rail gave way. She didn't fall far, maybe 3 feet onto our platform. But she hit hard. Her phone flew from her hand, arced through the air, and disappeared into the black water below. She screamed, not from pain, from loss. My phone, my phone. Everything was on that phone. Get it. Someone get it. I looked at the churning water below, looked at her. It's gone. You did this. You pushed me. I'll sue you for... There are construction cameras all over this site. They'll show exactly what happened. You leaned over a rail that had warning tape on it. You chose this. Evan tried to stand, slipped, caught himself. We need to get out of here. This whole structure is unstable. He was right. The platform was tilting more with each wave that hit the supports below. Move, I said, toward the main catwalk, carefully. We moved like a chain gang. Me first, testing each step. Maya behind me. Evan after her. Lena last, still crying about her phone. We made it to the stable section just as our platform tore completely free and crashed into the water below. We stood on the main deck, soaked and shaking. Below us, a crowd had gathered, drawn by Lena's screams or by the sound of the platform crashing or just by the spectacle of it all. Mr. Holloway was there, Walker and all, Priya with her recording equipment, Gabe in his security uniform, Ruth with her arms crossed, Clive with a work crew ready to secure the area, and phones. So many phones, all filming, all documenting. You have to help us down, Lena shouted at me. This is your job. You're supposed to keep people safe. I am keeping you safe, I said, by making you face what you've done. I pulled the ring box from my jacket pocket, still there, still dry in its waterproof case, held it up for everyone to see. These were stolen, by my son, from his own wedding. I recovered them. Now I'm returning them. I climbed down the ladder, slowly, carefully, my shoulder screaming, and walked through the crowd to 2 people I'd never met, Lena's parents. Your daughter and my son made a mistake, I told them quietly. Multiple mistakes, but these rings don't belong to either of them anymore. They belong to you, to return or keep or do whatever you think is right. Lena's mother took the box with shaking hands. Her father just stared at me. I'm sorry, he said. For what? For not seeing this sooner, for not stopping it. You couldn't have known. Ruth appeared beside me, carrying a folder full of papers. Formal notices, she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. Civil claims filed and served. Cease and desist orders for image misuse and defamation. And, she pulled out one more paper. A formal building ban. Evan and Lena are no longer permitted on these premises or at the apartment building where you reside. Enforced by management and backed by documented policy violations. Evan climbed down the ladder, followed by Maya and finally Lena. They stood in a small cluster, isolated, while the crowd watched. Priya stepped forward with her microphone. I have a timeline of documented events, text messages showing premeditation, voice notes showing fraud, video showing assault, porn records showing theft, building violations showing negligence. All verified, all factual, all on record. She looked at the crowd. I'm going to run this story tomorrow. If anyone has objections based on factual errors, you can contact me tonight. Otherwise, it's going live at 6 a.m. No one objected. Vendors started stepping forward. The florist who'd done the rehearsal dinner, the photographer who'd been at the wedding, the caterer who'd provided food. One by one, they announced they were revoking services, cutting ties, terminating contracts. Lena's face crumpled. You can't do this. We have contracts. We'll sue. Your contracts have morality clauses, the venue manager said. You violated them. We're done. Sponsors sent texts in real time. I could see Evan's phone lighting up with notifications. Terminated. Partnership ended. Account closed. He looked at me across the crowd. Are you happy now? Is this what you wanted? I wanted you to understand consequences, I said. You've been taking without giving for years. Stealing, lying, hurting people for content. This isn't revenge. This is math. Actions plus time equals results. We're your children. You are my children. Now you're just people who made bad choices. Clive and his crew started securing the construction site, putting up proper barriers, shutting down access. Gabe was already filing an incident report about the platform collapse. The crowd began to disperse, some people filming until the last second, others just shaking their heads and walking away. Maya stood apart from Evan and Lena, looking lost. I walked over to her. You have a choice now. Keep going with them or start over somewhere else. But you don't get to play both sides anymore. I don't know what to do. Figure it out. You're 24. You're smart. You have skills. Use them for something that isn't destroying people. I turned and walked toward the main venue building. Ruth fell into step beside me. That was harsh, she said. That was necessary. Where does this end? It ends when they have nothing left to take, nothing left to steal, nothing left to exploit, when they're just people again, with no platform and no audience and no choice but to be honest. And if they come after you again? They won't. They have nothing left to come after me with. We walked into the venue's main hall, the same hall where they'd planned their wedding, the same hall where Lena had slapped me in front of 100 people, the same hall where, in 3 hours, I'd finish what I'd started. The venue manager met us in the main hall. The space was empty now, chairs stacked, tables folded, the chandeliers I'd hung casting long shadows across the polished floor. The wedding deposit, he said. They're demanding a refund, full amount. What does the contract say? I asked. Contract says no refunds after the ceremony begins. They started the ceremony. The officiant declared them married before everything fell apart. Then they get nothing. They're threatening to sue. Let them. I have documentation of every policy violation they committed. Assault on premises, theft on premises, disruption of other events, the alarm incident. All of it. He nodded slowly. I'm revoking their venue credit too, the one they tried to use for a vow renewal next year. It's gone. Good. Ruth spread her papers across one of the unfolded tables. Final accounting. The utility fraud cost you $600 over 3 months. Emotional distress from 2 documented assaults, $5,000. Theft of jewelry, $3,000. Filing fees and legal costs, $800. Total, $9,600. Will I see any of it? Probably not. But the court judgments go on their record. Every future landlord will see them. Every future lender, every future business partner. That's better than money. Priya arrived with her camera crew. Final interview? One more thing first, I said. I walked to the storage room and pulled out the pieces of the head table. The same table that had been set up for Evan and Lena's reception. White cloth, gold chairs, the spot where the bride and groom were supposed to sit in triumph. Clive helped me carry it out. We set it up in the center of the empty hall, directly under the main chandelier. This table, I said to Priya's camera, was supposed to be for my son and his wife, for their celebration, for their future. They tried to build that future by tearing me down, by stealing from me, by humiliating me in public and private, by taking what wasn't theirs and calling it success. I sat down in the center chair, the one meant for the groom. I paid for this table, not with money, the venue covered that, but with 30 years of tightening bolts in this building, with nights away from my family to keep this structure safe, with decades of work that nobody noticed because that's the point of good maintenance. Nothing falls, nothing breaks, nothing fails. The camera crew adjusted their angles. More people were filtering back into the hall now, drawn by word of mouth or social media posts. The crowd from outside coming in to see the finale. So I'm taking it back. This table, this space, this reputation, everything they tried to steal. Evan and Lena appeared in the doorway, soaked, exhausted, defeated. "You can't do this," Lena said weakly. "This is our venue, our wedding." "Your wedding ended the moment you ran off with stolen property," the venue manager said. "This gentleman, on the other hand, has an employee access agreement and full permission to be here." Security, Gabe and two others, moved to flank the doorway. "You need to leave," Gabe said quietly. "You're trespassing. We paid for this space. You violated your contract. You're no longer welcome here." More vendors arrived, returning deposits, severing final ties, each one delivering their news with professional courtesy and absolute finality. Maya stood in the back of the growing crowd, watching everything, crying silently. I stayed sitting at the table, hands folded, expression calm. The hall filled with people, some cheering, some filming, some just watching in shocked silence as the full weight of consequences crashed down on Evan and Lena. "Last chance," I said to them. "Walk away now. Start over somewhere else. Learn from this, or keep fighting and keep losing." Evan's phone buzzed. He looked at it. His face went white. "The Flip House lenders," he said numbly. "They're foreclosing. The stop work order means we can't complete the project. We're losing everything." "No," I corrected. "You're losing what you never really had. The house you couldn't afford. The image you couldn't sustain. The success you built on fraud." Lena collapsed into a chair. Not dramatically. Just a slow sink, like all her strength had finally run out. The crowd pressed closer. Cameras everywhere. Priya narrating the scene for her podcast. Ruth distributing final legal notices with the efficiency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. Thunder cracked outside. The storm that had been building all night finally broke fully. Rain hammered the windows. Wind howled around the building's corners. And I sat at the table I'd paid for, surrounded by people I'd kept safe for 30 years, while my son and his wife were escorted out into the storm with nothing. No rings, no gifts, no venue, no sponsors, no home, no reputation, just the consequences of their choices, catching up at last. The doors closed behind them. The sound of it echoed through the hall like a gavel. Mr. Holloway made his way to my table slowly, sat down beside me. "You did good," he said. "I did what was necessary." Same thing in the end. The crowd began to disperse. Some people stayed to shake my hand, to thank me, to say they'd been watching the whole time and were glad someone had finally stood up to influencer culture and entitlement and all the small cruelties that had become normalized. I accepted their words, but didn't feel triumphant. Just tired. Just ready to go home to my apartment, my space, my table, and rest. Priya sat down across from me. "How do you feel?" "Empty, relieved, exhausted." "Do you regret any of it?" "I regret that it was necessary. I don't regret doing it." "What now?" "Now I go back to work, tighten bolts, check cables, make sure nothing falls. Same as always." "And if they come back, if they try again?" I looked at her calmly. "Then I'll be ready, because I'm always ready. That's what 30 years of keeping people safe teaches you. Always check your work, always plan for failure, always make sure you can walk away when it's over." Thunder rolled. The lights flickered once but held. I stood up from the table and walked toward the exit. Ruth and Clive fell into step beside me. Outside, the storm raged on, but I'd already weathered worse.